You won't find this story published on any news media or find a record of it just about anywhere. So some people think that it's possible that it isn't true, but there's also quite a few reports and witness accounts to substantiate that a family was actually killed at an RV park in the land between the lakes area by a dogman. And there's even one witness who has come forward saying that he was one of the survivors of this attack. I'm actually going to be presenting to you a witness statement from someone outside of that group who was actually working at a convenience store on the alleged night of the occurrence. And she interacted with two officers who were on the scene. Sometime in the spring of 1982, just before the big tourist season in the land between the lakes, a family was actually camped out at an RV spot, which now is no longer in use. And remnants of that spot are still visible, like some foundations of the bathhouses and some like tie down areas. But if you ask anyone in the area, there is speculation on whether or not this event actually occurred. But to the people who have come forward, it is a very real story. And tragically, people lost their lives. So the witness that has come forward, she states that she was working at like a quick stop convenience market and it was the night shift. So it would have been sometime after midnight. And as she was working, she saw an officer's car pull up, and one of the officers actually came inside the store to get some coffee and some water for his partner. And the convenience store clerk, she could actually see that the other officer was outside of the police car. He was bent over, kind of with his hands placed on his thighs, and he was lurched forward and was spilling the contents of his stomach. So this, of course, made her think, obviously, that something very serious had happened. And the partner that was inside got a cup of water for his friend, and there was nobody else in the store at the time. So the convenience clerk obviously was concerned. She grabbed a pack of Rolaids and went out into the parking lot. She offered the Rolaids to the officer who was losing his dinner and could tell that he was just completely in shock and pale and just obviously traumatized. And he accepted the Rolaids. And then the two officers actually went over to the sidewalk area. And she continued to observe them for a while, but was trying to keep a little bit of distance so that way she didn't seem too intrusive, but just wanted to be there to offer her support. She overheard the two men talking about what had happened, and they had just left a gruesome scene where an entire family was actually killed by some kind of beast. It looked like an animal attack. The family consisted of one man, one woman, and a young girl. And some of the stories vary that a young boy may have also been a victim in this case. When the police officers arrived on the scene, it was something straight out of a horror movie. They mentioned that the door of the RV was actually like it had been pulled and was kind of dangling on the side. There were visible bloody handprints on the door and the door frame and several parts of the RV. Both of the adults were dead, clearly, and the accounts vary, stating that the two were gruesomely attacked. The female had suffered the worst of the injuries, and it looked like she had put up a fight. Allegedly, some hair and saliva was taken from the scene, which proved to show that it was an unknown species with canine saliva. The little girl, who would have been probably about 9 at the time, depending on different reports. Two of the reports state that one says that she was actually found up in a tree, but then the supposed survivor of this attack, who would have been about 15 years old at the time, the young man, states that that was not the case, that her body was actually found in kind of like a ravine type area or ditch type area, that it was actually her clothing or parts of her clothing that were found up in the tree, and that one of the beasts actually was up in the tree and blood had dripped down onto one of the officers who was standing below. So the two officers who were at the convenience store eventually confided in this supposed witness, stating that it was unlike anything they had ever seen and that they were there investigating for a while. They found the bodies, they found the evidence of this gruesome attack that would have looked like maybe a bear or a cougar or something to that effect. But the gashes on the skin were different than what would have been like an attack by a bear or a cougar. The claw marks were very different. And they were at the site for a while, but then they were told by another agency, several agencies actually showed up, state troopers and troopers from the surrounding area. And then when the initial investigation was completed, the officers said that there were men that showed up with unmarked vehicles and were actually wearing non-identifiable clothing. So they weren't sure who this group of people were. And they were told that they were to keep their mouths shut and that this information was not to get out. Now, the woman at the convenience store, make of this what you will. I don't know that these police officers would have confided in her, but also when people are traumatized, they're not necessarily thinking about the fact that they were told to keep their mouth shut. They're just trying to cope with a very difficult situation. And the witness who had posted her account on a website previously, the website was actually taken down. So again, this is up for speculation. The surviving witness is now, of course, grown, a fully grown adult man, and he allegedly came forward and talked to other podcasters. He goes by the name Roger. So again, there are several witnesses. The most recent witness information that I found was a report where a young woman claimed that around that time frame, her husband had said that he had driven by this same area and saw the police tape and multiple cars from different counties and state troopers, and just there was definitely something going on at this particular RV park, and he just expected it to be like a shooting or something to that effect, and then just never really heard anything about it until later this alleged story came out. It kind of resonated with him and made sense that this was the same location that he had seen all these cop cars. So again, make of that what you will. It is a compelling story. It's terrifying to think that this family suffered through this event and that the story was never made public. And some people will say that the reason it was kept quiet was because this is an area where they rely heavily on tourism. It was right before the busy season, and we all know that cover ups are possible. I'm not saying that I believe one way or the other, but I am saying that it is interesting that there is a list of people who claim that this happened and that this is true, and that one witness has come forward to say that he actually survived this event. So, all due respect to anyone that may have been involved. And I'm just here to present the information that I have because I do believe that these things exist. Now, whether or not this particular event happened, I don't know. Again, it's possible that it was covered up and kept quiet. And I send my condolences to anyone that may have been involved. And it's something that no one should ever have to go through or witness. And it's a terrible incident that occurred. And if it was in fact covered up, that just makes it even worse because it's like the people who survived and witnessed this are made to be silent. And it's like their voice doesn't matter and that this event doesn't matter, and it does matter. So thank you for listening. And again, make of this what you will, but there is conflicting stories about this case. So I would encourage you to do your research.